Series today with another legendary investor, Pimco's Bill Gross. And as in so many other facets of his life, Bill Gross actually manages to over-deliver once again. Instead of just telling us about his worst trade, he gave us a trifecta pick that concerned a series of trades that he made back in 1974 and 1975.
In terms of mistakes, there are sins of commission and sins of omission. And the three trades in 74, 75, some of them were sins of commission and some were sins of omission. Let me speak to the omission in terms of what we didn't do properly. There were two gentlemen in 1975 that came by Pacific Mutual, which was the owner of Pimco, and Pimco's offices. Names were Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, and they were looking for a loan, for a $10 million loan for a company called Berkshire Hathaway. Seemed like a funny company. Had a dilapidated industrial complex in the Northeast and a See's Candy store just down the street here. Blue chip stamps, but not much else. And they were reputable, smart, intelligent people, but in terms of a loan to that company, it just didn't seem right for Pimco, although it was right for Pacific Mutual. And so Pacific Mutual did the loan. Pimco said, pass.
They just weren't quite up to snuff. You didn't feel 100% comfortable?
No, not with blue chip stamps in that candy store down the street. Where was the value? So we passed on that loan. That was a sin of omission, a mistake, obviously, based on where Berkshire Hathaway went. About a week later, I went off on a plane trip to a small town in Arkansas called Bentonville. And I was picked up by a gentleman called Sam Walton in a pickup truck with his two sons and his dog named Dan. The two sons and Sam would drive me around town and show me the Walmart. All the while, with their dog named Dan, they'd yell, "Get him, Dan! Get him, Dan!" when a dog or a cat would cross the street. And they showed me their Walmart, and they wanted to expand into Iowa and Ohio and so on. They seemed like very high-character, reputable people, but the store and the idea decided to pass for Pimco. Again, Pacific Mutual took the loan.
So this was maybe a little dingier than you were quite used to? Maybe just that, maybe not just yet?
Small, and the assets, the property, just didn't seem to be worthy of a $10 million loan.
Oh, gosh.
Now for the sin of commission, which took place about 2 weeks later. Flew up to San Francisco. This company called ITEL, not Intel, ITEL. It was a rail car leaser. And it was met at the airport and taken immediately to the rail yards, and we pounded the steel on those wheels and pounded the steel on those rail cars, and those seemed like stable assets that were never going away. Then they took me to the headquarters in downtown San Francisco, 30 stories high, view of the Golden Gate, carpets this thick, secretaries, and they called them secretaries back then, not assistants, secretaries that were good looking. I said, now this is a company.
Oh, no.
Carpets, secretaries, rail cars that you can touch and feel, and the steel. So the loan was made, $5 million to ITEL, and 6 months later, that company was bankrupt.
So this sounds like a common theme in terms of a lesson you picked up in a very short period of time.
It was, and I later learned, as I was reading through the history books about J.P. Morgan, the old magnate in the early 1900s. And he was testifying to Congress and came forth with a very famous saying that I saw and put up on my wall because that was the lesson of all three of these incidents, the acts of omission and the sins of commission. So and this is what's up on the wall. And it's a picture of J.P. Morgan, and there he is with his vest and his pocket watch and his bulbous nose, and he looks mean and angry, doesn't he? And what he told the Congress was a philosophy that applies to all three of those incidents. And he said that lending is not based on money or property, not on those Walmart stores, or not on those rail cars or those thick carpets or on that See's candy store. No, lending is based on character. On character, sir. That's what he said. And that was the lesson of lending that I learned from each three of those, that the people were the important ingredient, that if I had gone further in terms of the intelligence and the character of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and Sam Walton, the loan would have been made and it would have been more than profitable. But instead I chose the flash, the property, and went in the wrong direction. And so J.P. Morgan sits up on my wall. That's the lesson of lending that Pimco ascribes to ever since.
Well, as Gross showed you, he has that very...
The picture went up on my wall in 1981, and the loans, or the lack of loans, that were made in 1975. And so I was reading through a history book about J.P. Morgan and him speaking to the character, the importance of character as opposed to the importance of property or collateral or money. And it struck me that that was the lesson of my first mistake of commission, the ITEL loan, the loan based on carpets and good-looking secretaries. And at the same time, I put it together and I said that was the reason for the mistake in terms of not lending money to Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and Sam Walton, that I was looking more at their property as opposed to their character and their intelligence. And so I said, I'm putting this up on the wall, and this will be a lesson for me and for Pimco in years to come. And it certainly was in terms of the subprime crisis when property and the basis of collateral that supposedly were underlying, you know, all of the loans that were made, manufactured, and securitized. You know, I looked at that picture of Morgan and I said, no, sir, we're not going there.
Tell me about something that you either didn't invest in as a result of this rule or you did invest in because you looked up at the wall and you saw that picture of J.P. Morgan.
Well, we didn't invest in subprimes. We were well aware, Orange County being really the hot spot of property, of what J.P. Morgan basically said not to lend against. And we had rather significant knowledge of the character of the loans that were being made. In many cases, the liar loans, the no docs, the low docs, you know, were of poor character too. And so these weren't loans that could be made either on the basis of property or on the basis of character. Pimco avoided the entire subprime crisis, and you know, our 2008 numbers relative to everybody else were more than outstanding, and you know, set the stage really for the next 10 years.